Hi everybody, I want to welcome you to my new channel, Kickin Aspergers. This is the very first episode of Kickin Aspergers, so I want to welcome you to the brand new channel, Kickin Aspergers. My name is Tim, I'm going to be your host. First, I want to give a little disclaimer. I am not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I am not a trained physician or therapist or anything like that. I have absolutely no medical training whatsoever outside of taking a couple CPR classes and a very, very basic first aid class. So, I'm not a physician. Please, if you think you have Asperger's or autism, see a medical professional, see a psychologist. Make sure you are diagnosed and treated properly. So, I want to make sure that I get that out in the open. My name is Tim. Like I said, I'm going to be the host. And just to let you know, this is going to be something that I am very open and honest with you all. There's not going to be a whole lot of editing in anything that I do because I want you to get like the raw deal. I want you to experience what it is. I should let you know that I do have a sidekick. You have a little kitten named Roach. Um, you'll probably hear her meow and purr and all sorts of stuff, but it's my little Kit Kat. I enjoy her a lot. Um, it's just she's my little sidekick. So she'll probably make a surprise visit from time to time. She might jump up here on the table next to me, and again, like I said, you'll probably hear a meow. So let me introduce you to who I am. Again, my name's Tim. I'm 36. I grew up in the Kansas City area, graduated high school in Kansas City, and after graduating high school, I went south to Oklahoma where I earned a degree in meteorology, continued on to graduate school, and after a little while, I actually did leave graduate school and ended up moving back to the Kansas City area, and now I do something completely different. I own a chauffeur transportation company. About 20 years ago, when I was in high school, I was diagnosed with Asperger's, and it was something that finally fit my life, finally fit who I was. And if it weren't for that psychiatrist back when I was in high school telling my mother, hey, I think your son has Asperger's, that I probably wouldn't be where I am today because I've been misdiagnosed all throughout my life. Um, so, first off, people with Asperger's, I don't know if they actually say that people have Asperger's anymore. They've reclassified it to where it's now part of the autism spectrum. They did that in, I want to say, 2013. So I don't think Asperger's is something that is a specific diagnosis anymore. They might say you are high functioning autistic, you have high functioning autism, but it is something that has been reclassified from its own diagnosis from DSM 4, which passed, I want to say, in 1994, to becoming part of the broader autism spectrum in 2013 with DSM 5, is what they call it. Again, growing up, I was misdiagnosed with a lot of different things. I was diagnosed having ADD, ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder, bipolar, depressed. I mean, pretty much everything under the sun as far as that goes. Um, I guess it's a common thing for people to get misdiagnosed. By the way, maybe we should there's Roach there. Hey, Roach, say hi to everybody. Hey, say hi. There you go. So, but it's something that is very common to have misdiagnoses, especially in younger years, because it's not like the traditional autism where it's easily diagnosed when you're very young, 2 or 3 years old, because of developmental disabilities or developmental delays, especially with social interactions. It's something that is diagnosed later on. So that is how I came about being diagnosed with Asperger's. Went through a lot of different stuff. Actually, when I was in the sixth grade, when I was 11 years old, I was admitted into a hospital for some evaluation because of the psychological disorders, I guess you could say, that I had. But again, I was misdiagnosed. That did I really need to go into a psychiatric hospital with the misdiagnosis? Probably not. So anyway, I do have some notes here. I want to talk to you a little bit about what is Asperger's. Like I said, a lot of people don't truly know what it is. I know a lot of my friends, when I introduce them to myself and to who I am, my particular case, that I am a little bit socially awkward. I think everyone's socially awkward. I feel really awkward. They don't understand what Asperger's is or high functioning autism. Um, it's a type of, and I'm taking this just from things that I've read online, kind of combining things from um, the Autism Society at autism. I think it's autismspeaks.org. But it's something that again is now on the autism spectrum as of 2013. It's one broad diagnosis to have autism. This I would say is high functioning autism, HFA. Some people say, oh, they have Asperger's syndrome, they're an ASPy. um, I don't necessarily call myself an Aspie. I don't necessarily go around saying that I have autism or that I have Asperger's. If people think I'm a little awkward, or the closer I get to them, I might open up a little bit and tell them a little bit more about me. People that have Asperger's syndrome, they typically have difficulty with social interactions. That's me. If you're someone who's watching this, you have Asperger's, you have high functioning autism, you have awkward social interactions, you're not alone. I have awkward social interactions every day, every day. You have very restricted interests. And that doesn't mean that you only have, you don't have interests or you only go a little bit into your interest. It means that you are very focused on a few things. I found that other people that have Asperger's, they tend to focus on things like math, physics, maps. Maps are a big thing for me. Astronomy, and so a lot of the sciences. I think that's because there's a very definitive answer. I think that's very soothing for someone like me or people that have autism, because there is a right and a wrong. It's very clear cut. It's black or white. There's not a whole lot of middle ground. We have people that have Asperger's have the desire for sameness. Oftentimes, you'll see me. I will buy these same clothes over and over and over again. I will buy these same shoes over and over and over again. I definitely fit into that. We like normalcy. We don't like to venture off. I almost want to say it's like the Tim Cook type of clothing style, if you will, where it's the same clothes day in and day out. It makes it very easy for us. It's the sameness. And then we have very distinctive strengths. Some of those strengths are focus. We have the incredible ability to focus on one thing, tune everything else out. If for some reason you think that we're not paying attention to you, we seem focused on something else, the truth is we probably are. I know that sounds like a typical male thing, but for someone like me, it can be very difficult at times for friends or family members to get my attention because I'll be focused on something that I'm really into, whether that be a specific homework assignment when I was growing up, or a specific problem that I'm facing in my career, trying to solve something. That is something we do. We're also tend to be very, very persistent until we get the right answer. We also like to be right. I know when I did a lot of my, as stupid as this sounds, when I did a lot of my math homework, I couldn't have eraser marks on my paper. It had to be right. It was just one of those weird things that I had. We like recognizing patterns. Again, I think that's why, me personally, I was big into astronomy, is because there were patterns in the sky. Why I chose meteorology as a career is that I could sit there and watch weather patterns over and over and over again. We have attention to detail. Sometimes it's detail in the stupidest things. Growing up, going into high school, I'd walk into a room, I'd leave the room, I'd come back, something would move. I would notice that. Nobody else would notice that. Numerous times I was told, hey, you should become a detective. You notice things that nobody else does. I think that's just a part of the Asperger's, is that there are stupid little things that I notice. Even here recently, when something moved in my house, somebody moved something. There was, I could tell something was missing. There was a void there. I don't think anyone else would have noticed that had gone. We have a lot of challenges. Some of the challenges are hypersensitivity. For me, yeah, for some people it's lights, noises. For me, it tends to be more noises, um, and tastes. I don't. I Tastes are a big thing for me, especially when it comes to trying new foods. I hate trying new foods. If I ever travel out of town, I I try to go to the local restaurants, but again, trying new foods or trying even new uh, cultures of foods, whether that be Indian food, Japanese food, Chinese food, Mexican food, Italian, whatever, different foods from around the world that I'm not accustomed to, having grown up, in the Midwest and the Central Plains in Kansas City. It can be a real challenge for me to try those new foods because I do like my taste. Sounds, lights. I'm not a big fan of going to concerts. I'm not a big fan of going to sporting events. They tend to be really loud. Also, there's a lot of people that I don't know, and again, I feel socially awkward. So, in order for me to go to a sporting event, to a football game, like a Chiefs game, I actually have to go with friends. There have been times I where I've tried to go alone and meet up with people. I really can't do it. Just that ramp up from me being alone to a stadium with 70 plus thousand people, it's a tough thing for me to do. Um, Difficulty to give and take conversation is one of the things that's here. That is something that I find myself um, having difficulties with when it comes to conversing with people. I will tend to focus on some things that don't matter instead of the things that do matter. Sometimes when you need to look at the big picture, I tend to focus on the granular details. When you need to look at the granular details, I'm looking at the big picture. So sometimes it's difficult for me to have conversations with some people sometimes. Um, you know, Another thing here, it says difficulty with nonverbal communication skills. Um, some of the things that are nonverbal, it's not language, but it's just the volume that I speak in. There are times where I'll get a little bit anxious or a little bit upset with a family member or something like that. I will get louder. I'm not yelling. Especially my mom will say, "Don't yell at me. Why are you yelling?" Stuff like that. I don't intend to yell. I don't think I'm yelling. It's one of those things. I can get a lot louder. I think it's more, it goes back to that focus thing. I'm so focused on trying to get my point across that inadvertently, and without really doing it myself, I tend to raise my voice. Um, it says uncoordinated movements, clumsiness. That's real funny. About the time that I was really going through those motor skill development stages, when you're in your 8, 9, 10, early teens, that age when you're starting to play sports and stuff like that, I was actually diagnosed with arthritis. Um, when you have a hard time walking because of arthritis, it's really hard to tell whether or not your motor skills are lacking or they're slowly to develop. I really had a hard time just walking because of the arthritis. So I guess it's something that happens for a lot of people. That's why you don't see a lot of these people that go out and play sports that tend to be on the autism spectrum. I think it's a combination of again, the sounds within the stadium. If you're playing basketball or football or baseball, there's sounds within the stadium. There's people you don't know. You're not as proficient in swinging the bat or throwing the football or making that basket, whatever it is. Um, Anxiety and depression, that's a big thing for me, and it's a little bit different than what most people get as far as anxiety and depression. For me, the depression is it comes back from the social awkwardness. I will tell someone something, and when I leave the situation, I am constantly thinking in my head, did I say the right thing? Did they understand what I meant? Um, and oftentimes, I wonder if I said the right thing or if I screwed it up. If there was a better way for me to say it, did they understand? And I will replay that over and over and over and over in my head. And, that cycle causes a little bit of depression. Also, empathy. People that have Asperger's don't tend to understand empathy very well. I'll actually cover empathy in an upcoming episode. I have recently, over the past few months, made great strides in becoming empathetic. Um, and I'll talk more about that in detail. Um, as far as ways, if you have Asperger's or you know someone that has Asperger's, if it's a child or a brother or sister, as far as ways to overcome it, there are some classes apparently that you can take that will teach you more social skills so you can develop better communication skills. It really has taken a lot of time for me. I think a lot of, I haven't taken any, but what I've done is I actually listen to, for me, it's kind of been a self medication thing. I listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of talk radio, and I think hearing the dialogue between people that call into a talk radio show and how the radio show host responds has taught me a lot. I want to say that really over the last 5 years that I my communication skills have gotten a lot better. I feel a lot more confident in the way that I interact with people today than I did, 5 years ago. Um, as far as the speech with the volume stuff, there's classes for that. Um, so yeah, from this is just something that I took from spectrumnews.org. It's people with Asperger's tend to be very repetitive in things that they do. I know growing up, it was one of those things. My mom would always kind of chuckle when I would tie my shoes again and again and again and again. And I would count as I tied my shoes again and again and again and again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I would always end 10. Even today, if I go to a Chinese buffet and I pick up the sweet and sour chicken, I will always get 10 pieces of sweet and sour chicken. Always. It's that repetitive nature. It's just what I am. It's who I am. I'm not embarrassed by it. I know it's a little odd, but you know what isn't odd? 10 pieces of chicken. That's an even number. As far as who has Asperger's, much like autism, there is a much greater occurrence with Asperger's and autism, or autism in general, and Asperger's in males than in females. Now, a lot of that may be that women are, I'll just read what it says here. It says that, research indicates girls with the disorder tend to be diagnosed later in life because they're better at masking their symptoms. Women generally, I think, are better actors or actresses. And I think that's true. I think that they are better at masking their syndromes or their symptoms. With that being said, just autism in general has a higher prevalence with men over women. And I have thoughts on that, and I'll discuss those again in a later episode. Some of the other things, you can have a very successful life having Asperger's, and I don't want anyone to think that. There are famous people that have been diagnosed with Asperger's. One of the best ones that I know of is Dan Aykroyd, who, Ghostbusters, Caddyshack, a lot, Blues Brothers. He was on Saturday Night Live. He has Asperger's. And it's funny because he's a comedian. Now, that is something, I make jokes from time to time. I have friends that think I'm outrageously funny. Quite honestly, a lot of the jokes I make are things that I see in everyday life. It's just what it is. I find that they're humorous. I share that humor. There are people that have Asperger's that, tend to be quite comical. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. Daryl Hannah, she's been diagnosed with Asperger's. As far as going in the past, it's very difficult to tell people that have passed away prior to Asperger's being identified. It was identified really by, it wasn't an Austrian. It was a psychiatrist with the last name of Asperger back in 1944 that he started noticing people with this unique trait, and that's where Asperger's, the term Asperger's comes from. So prior to 1944, there was no diagnosis for Asperger's because it didn't exist. If you go back and you look at certain people from history, there is a belief that Abraham Lincoln may have had Asperger's. Um, the two that I find fascinating are Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. Um, so, I mean, really, I don't want you to think that you're any less of a, if you have Asperger's or you have a child or family member that has Asperger's or a friend that has Asperger's, I don't want you to think that they don't have the capability of being someone that is well known, being very successful. Dan Aykroyd, very successful. I mean, Abraham Lincoln, he was, president. I mean, that's a respectable position. I think there are people that can be very successful and have Asperger's. Um, but really, I mean, it's kind of all I wanted to get to on this first episode. I don't want these episodes to really last too long. It already looks like I've gone beyond 20 minutes. That's a little bit long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save my notes for episode 2 of Kickin Asperger's. I want to talk more about Einstein and Newton in episode 2. And really, I want to talk over some careers that I think I've had some interest in, and I think would be great for other people that have Asperger's or high-functioning autism to be successful in. If you have any questions whatsoever about Asperger's, I want you to please send me a message, drop a comment below, send me a private message if you're embarrassed to ask it out in public. I understand that, they are public comments. But I do want to talk to, or to have content. I want to discuss what I think we can do about it and how, we might be able to overcome it together, or give you some ideas on how to overcome it. But again, like I said, there are a lot of upcoming stuff I want to talk to you about. What I think about Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein possibly having Asperger's. I want to talk to you about how to become more empathetic with you have Asperger's, because I know that's a challenge for a lot of you, and really how to get out and start to train yourself to become a little bit more open, a little bit more, I don't want to say accepted in the community, because I think we're all accepted. But again, and I want you to remember that even though you have Asperger's, you're not special. I think we're all created equally. You're just gifted in ways that other people are not gifted. Again, thank you very much for tuning into this first episode of Kickin Asperger's. I really hope that you tune in to the future episodes. If this is something you like, please leave me a comment that you like it. Please share this with your friends. I really want to help the community of people with Asperger's. Y'all have a great day.